Welcome to this meeting of the Boston MPO UPWP Committee. I will call this meeting to order. First, I will read the virtual meeting guidelines. So all participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. You are able to mute and unmute yourselves. But to participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function by either clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen and a window will pop up, or the reactions button in the toolbar, and then I will call on you. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. And if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Matt Archer via the chat box, via email at marcher, M-A-R-C-H-E-R @ctps.org, or by phone at 857-702-3708. The accessibility statement for the meeting is that the meeting will be recorded, is being recorded right now. It's accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions to the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require additional accommodations in order to participate fully in the meeting, please also contact Matt Archer of MPO staff at marcher @ctps.org, or by phone at 857-702-3708. Thank you. So with that, I think we can move to introductions. So my name is Derek Cravat. I am the chair of the UPWP committee from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, liaison to the Boston MPO. I'll now take a digital roll call of committee members. So I will call out the affiliation, and then please feel free to introduce yourself. So Town of Arlington, Daniel Amstutz.
Yep, Daniel Amstutz, I'm here.
All right. Boston Transportation Department, Bill Conroy. Don't think I see Bill. City of Framingham. Don't see anyone from Framingham. Town of Medway. Okay. City of Newton.
David Kozis, representing Mayor Fuller.
Great, morning. Town of Norwood, Tom O'Rourke.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing Trick.
Great, good morning. Town of Westwood, Steve Olenoff. I think you're an alternate, but I see you here.
It's Steve Olenoff. I'm the Trick alternate, so I'm not a voting member.
Sounds good. Good morning. City of Somerville, Thomas Bent.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville, in a core committee and representing Mayor Ballantyne.
Great. Morning. RTAC, Len Diggins.
Len Diggins, advisory council here.
Okay. Sounds good. I believe that is all of the voting members and alternates I see present. So with that, we can move to the next agenda item, which is public comments. Are there any members of the public that wish to make a comment at this time? Okay, seeing none. If you would like to make a comment at any point, just please use the raise hand function. If you do have any written comments, you can provide those to Srilekha Murthy via email at smurthy@ctps.org as well. If you're dialing in by phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand to make a comment. So the next item is summary of the November 18th, 2021 meeting. I believe the minutes, the written minutes are still under development, so I believe we will skip this item, but just so folks know, the recordings of the meetings are available online. The open meeting law requires that we endorse the minutes within 3 meetings of the minutes. So because we're, I think, on the second meeting since November 18th, we can endorse these at the next UPWP committee meeting. So I think that'll be our plan. But if folks want to see the summary, that's available online as well. So the next item then is agenda item 4, a discussion on the elimination of a 21-day comment period for UPWP amendments. I think I'll hand it over to Srilekha and Sandy for this one.
Thank you, Derek. So this is a proposal by staff to discuss the elimination of the 21-day comment period for UPWP amendments. So this comment period is not federally required for UPWP amendments. We rarely receive comments on amendments when released to the public, and removing this comment period ultimately allows staff to remain efficient in the time and resources that were allotted for the UPWP. And this isn't to say that we don't welcome public comments, it's that usually that since we don't receive them, by eliminating that sort of 3-week period where we can't make any sort of progress on moving the amendment forward through the process, our proposal is to remove this comment period. Next slide. So there are essentially 3 choices that we'd like to present to you for discussion today. Of course, we can retain the comment period if the board so chooses. We can eliminate the comment period for federal fiscal year 22's UPWP. This does require amending the public outreach plan. And the third option is to eliminate the comment period beginning with the federal fiscal year 2023 UPWP. So that's the one under development currently. So I guess with that, I welcome any questions from the committee and discussion of this topic.
Okay, thank you, Srilekha. Any questions or comments? Len, did you want to?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Len. Yep.
So a couple of things. I understand that people aren't making comments. And I doubt there's really much desire to make comments on these. But one of the issues that I raised before I was even chair was that I wonder sometimes if the short comment period itself makes it unlikely or less likely that people will make comments, because for the advisory council and other groups tend to meet only once a month, and the 3-week comment period can make it hard for them to fit the deliberation on a comment into their cycle. So even though I'm inclined to go along with this, I would ask that if we have the point, if we come to a situation where we make a really drastic amendment, that we factor that into our timeline and then try to make the comment period even longer, to allow people to really make comments on whatever it is that we're amending. So just as a kind of a practice that we don't necessarily put in code, but just something that we try to adhere to as a group that cares about public input. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Len. Good point. Daniel?
Thank you. I guess 2 things. I think I believe maybe it was in the last meeting, didn't we sort of talked about this previously, in the sense of when the same sort of thing about amending the UPWP and the need to do that less frequently. Isn't this connected with that, regarding the sort of whether or not there's actually a requirement to have a public comment period, or what threshold things need to be amended?
So they're closely linked, Derek, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Go ahead. Yep.
And we are still looking for clarification from FHWA about what the required policies are in terms of the budgeting and what the need to do amendments might be in the future. So we don't have total clarity on that yet. So if the committee and the board wants to wait for clarity on that to make this decision, that would also be a very reasonable position to take.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's I feel like that's sort of partly why this is coming up, or that's what I recall from continuing from the previous meeting, I guess early March. My second question, and I mean, I've sort of generally in favor of sort of figuring out what's the most efficient or easiest for staff to be able to manage. But on the third piece, eliminating the comment period beginning with fiscal year 23, wouldn't that also require an amendment to the public outreach plan? If that's, or would that be updated, that public outreach plan be updated anyway?
No, you are correct. It would require the amendment. Sorry, we lost an asterisk there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. David?
I think I was just agreeing with what Len was saying earlier. It seems like our amendments are usually, just little small things or, internal shifting things around between projects. And so that's usually, there's no really reason. There's no strong reason for anyone to make a comment, I think. So I think I would support this. And, I think that if there is something that anyone thinks is significant that we do in an amendment, isn't there always just the possibility of at that point just saying, all right, we'll have a 21-day comment period for this amendment because there's something significant, is not just some little thing that we're shifting around, right?
Right. Yeah, that's my understanding, is that that is an option. So it's a good point. Tom?
Thanks. I just agree with Len and David on this. So I don't need to elaborate, but I think, and then, if we do have the piece where if there's a major change, that we would put that out for a 21-day. So thank you.
Okay. Great. So it sounds like there's some consensus on that. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add my voice to the choir of agreement, maybe suggesting that we do it in 2023 so we don't have to mess around with the public outreach plan this year.
Okay. Yep. Steve?
So I think we have to be really careful here. This could be very dangerous. The UPWP is a public document, which is approved of the public process. So any significant amendments to it, we really need to, go through the same process. So we can't eliminate just because people don't comment is not a reason to say, we should eliminate the comment period. So we have the means now where if you feel okay, the comment period is not needed because this is so insignificant, we can vote to reduce it. I mean, the discussion has always been, do we reduce it? It should be 4 weeks, 3 weeks. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to the extreme of eliminating it completely. I think we need to say that there needs to be a comment period, but we have the ability to eliminate it if you feel it's minor. But I don't think we should do it the other way around, just eliminate it. And then how, say, okay, this is an important one, so we should put it in. That's just backwards. We have to continue to invite public comment, whether we get it or not. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I think Steve makes a good point too. I guess do we tend to waive? I don't really remember if there was a reason to waive the comment period for staff efficiency. They would just let us know and we would waive it. Maybe Steve is right. We should just keep it how it is and wait and tend to waive things if they're insignificant. I guess either way, but maybe Steve's idea is better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think that in the current plan, and Sandy and Sherlock, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not federally required to do it, but it is within the public outreach plan to require it without the option to waive it. So this might be taking sort of a combination of Steve's proposal and others' comments. Maybe there's an option to keep it required with the option to waive it, or keep it as the default, as opposed to eliminating it with the option to add it. So
Right, and I believe what we had done in the past is Steve referenced, going from a 30 to a 21-day comment period is initially we had some incidences where the amendment got where those extra 9 days really mattered. And so we asked the MPO to waive the 30-day requirement in favor of a 21-day requirement because that's what we thought was required. And now that we, and then we moved it permanently, having changed the language in the public engagement plan and in the UPWP to the 21 days. And now, only now after writing that in, we realize that it's not actually federally required. So yes, I think either of these plans sounds very workable from a staff perspective. And we'll be able to come to the committee. Maybe we write a suggested policy where we come to the committee for a judgment on whether something is a major or minor change and whether the committee wants to waive the public comment period. I do just want to also point out that regardless of what we do with the 21 or the 30-day public comment period, that these amendments are always going to be brought to the committee and to the MPO for approval. And there's, as with any other MPO vote, there's opportunity for the public to comment, and that we could also, doubly commit to making sure that that's well publicized, to make sure that people have a voice.
Sandy, Len.
Yep. So thank you, Chair. Can you give us some insights as to the issues with having the comment period? I mean, like, what are the conflicts that the staff are encountering that makes it desirable to eliminate the comment period? Because I know the issues are legit, but I just need to have a good sense of them in my head so that if I were to explain why we eliminated the comment period, I'd have like a decent example to go with. Thanks.
Do you want to address that, Sandy or Sri Lanka first?
Yeah, Sri Lanka, did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I guess the main kind of reason for wanting to eliminate the comment period is that the 21 days is sort of crucial when we're developing an amendment and we want to get it passed. If we're not receiving comments, that's kind of, in some senses, time lost where we could be amending the UPWP and then putting whatever we're amending into action. Not to say that public comments don't matter, but when it's something regarding budgets or a project that sort of needs to happen in a really time-sensitive manner, every day kind of counts. And when it's something that is not major, like a major amendment, I guess, like a drastic change in a budget or eliminating a project overall, but it's something that on the staff side is time sensitive, those 21 days can kind of, those 21 days are really crucial. Sandy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I would just say that, it's not just about efficiency, it's about actually getting the work done. And, I was in a position as a project manager a couple of years ago where you may remember we did an amendment to take one $60,000 project out of the UPWP and split it into two $30,000 studies. And I managed one of those two resulting $30,000 studies. And essentially we could have gotten started on that work a month earlier if we had not had to go through the whole public comment period. And that's not, that's a value judgment, right? It's not that this is an absolutely right thing to do, but we should be aware that the choices we're making are about how much, whether we're going to be able to get on work promptly once we realize the need to change something, and that this can delay actually getting the work done, which then can have impacts into the next budget cycle and into the next fiscal year. And I want to invite anybody else from staff, Hural or Tegan, to comment on this as well, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
I'll just say that was a very good example. Thank you very much. And with that example, I get it, and I can easily identify why that would be a good thing to have the ability, to have the ability to move faster. Let me stop talking now because I'm not very coherent, but I will. It'll influence my vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Daniel.
Thanks. I just wanted to add on, or I guess to my previous comments, you know, I'm very sympathetic to sort of the pickle that staff are in a bit, and like like Len said, Sandy's example was a good one. So, you know, in my opinion, I think that if you can work in a way to waive the comment period, or some other a bit more discretion from this committee, I think would be like, this committee is a public, you know, public body as well, or open meeting law. So I mean, there's opportunities to talk within this committee also, and just generally, I mean, public engagement is extremely important, but I'm skeptical when it's sort of seems like it's just public engaged, like trying to do a public comment period for the sake of doing it, as opposed to having it sort of targeted more a reason that the public engagement or public comment is really needed. So, you know, again, that's a bit subjective, like Sandy said, a sort of value judgment, but I think that if we're really, if you're not changing, I may have said this before, but if you're not changing sort of the core of the project, or there's a real benefit to sort of splitting projects like you did before, you know, I think that's something this maybe committee can talk about and see, unless it reaches some sort of predefined threshold that we decide on. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Good point. David?
All right, so the conversation is going on a little long, but I guess the key question is, you know, if there is something that's time sensitive, would staff always have the opportunity to let the MPO know in time? If that is the case, then, you know, we should probably just leave the 21-day period and waive it. If that is not the case, if there are times when staff would not be able to let the MPO know about something that's time sensitive because maybe they don't know in time, or maybe there's not an MPO meeting for 3 weeks. If that is the case, then maybe we should go the opposite way and not have, you know, the 21-day period unless we vote specifically to have it. So I guess that's the question that maybe would help determine which way we go.
Yeah, good point. Did you want to respond to that, Srileka, at all, or Sandy? I don't know if there's
I would say that I don't think I've necessarily encountered anything that couldn't wait until the next MPO meeting in my 5 years at CTPS, but there are people who've been around a lot longer than I have, or our senior management who have much more insight into these things than I do. So maybe one of them wants to weigh in.
any other thoughts on that. It seems like, yeah, keeping the comment period, I think, would still, and having the ability to waive it, I think, would still reduce some of the time that goes into it. So it's a good point, and it's a good question and a good distinction. So something to consider. But yeah, process it. Go ahead, Tom.
I mean, the way I'm looking at it is, you know, say you just have, you know, a couple word changes, things like that, to, you know, and staff's trying to get this thing done. It makes no sense to, you know, hold it up for 3 weeks. I think if we have the ability, so, and we're going to know, right? We're going to be looking at an amendment. And if that amendment is major, we're going to say, you know what, this needs to go out for a 21-day public comment. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but then the public has another shot at this when it goes to the MPO, right? So it's like they have, the public has 2 bites at the apple at this right now. And for very minor changes that are not significant or change anything, I just don't, it just, to me, it makes no sense to hold up staff for 3 weeks. They got a lot of work to do. This is something that's on the table. And, you know, once we do what we do, they can move it off. And, you know, I think that just makes more sense for everyone. That way the full board gets it quicker, probably. And then they can act it, and the public has a chance again to do that. But if there is a significant change, and I think we'll know that, and staff will know it too, you know, and they're going to probably recommend to us, you know what, this one should go out for a 21-day. public comment. And then, so that's where I am on this. And that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, Len.
So just a couple of questions. I mean, so staff is always going to bring an amendment to us so before they act on it, correct?
Yep.
Right. And so, and then we could say that we're going to waive and that would then go to it could go to the MPO as soon as that same day, like our upcoming meeting, correct?
Right, if it's on the MPO agenda.
So
that, yes.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So okay, I got you. So we'd have to. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Fine. Well, and with respect to maintaining status quo but allowing us to waive it, that would require amending the public outreach plan, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Currently, I don't think there's any ability
Okay.
to waive it.
So
Yeah.
either way, we're going to have to amend the public outreach plan. And what's that process like?
I
ahead,
believe that
Sandy.
is a 45-day public comment period for that one.
Right.
I think what we're hearing is probably a consensus emerging around not doing this now, but writing it into the 2023 UPWP, which would mean that we have until October 1st to finish the amendment process for the public engagement plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Excellent. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. So if the question is, do we not have a comment period and then try to decide when we, on a case-by-case basis if we need it, or we have a comment period and then on a case-by-case basis, we should say we should waive it. We need to go with the waiver way, because we just have to err on the side of public involvement and democracy and say it's required, but when, and then you should probably get more specific in our public involvement policy, what should constitute a reason for waiver. And I think that's what probably needs to be added if we don't have it already on this process. Thanks.
Good point. So, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Can I make a motion?
You can't. Was this intended to be an action item though? I think you can at any point. I just wanted to confirm.
We did not write it into the agenda as an action item.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
That's
the
fine.
intention was for us to come back with a written proposal, or really the action would be to, at this point, to write it into the 2023 UPWP. And the formal action would be voting on that draft and final document, and then also on the amendments, necessary amendments to the public engagement plan.
Okay, I don't want to get ahead of anything.
Okay.
Well,
Nope.
given this
Actually, I
discussion,
do,
we can
but-
come back with a summary of what the proposal would be for the language.
All right, thanks.
Len?
But I think what Tom was getting at though is there a way to really evaluate where this board or this group is on the process? I mean, I think it would be appropriate to make a motion to try to summarize where we are and see if we are unanimous, and if not, see where maybe the sticking points are for whatever members vote in the minority. I mean, so I would suggest doing that. And if Tom was, I feel like I'm going into chair territory here, so I'll just stop
Nope,
there, and then the
that's
chair
okay.
can pick up.
Nope, that's fine, Len. Yeah. So yeah, Tom, I don't want to be the barrier for that. So why don't you go ahead and summarize your takeaway? Because I agree. I think it would be good to just have on the record that there's a summary of what staff should take and consider as the consensus. So why don't you go ahead and summarize, and then we can do the motion.
Well, I was just gonna say I would opt for option 3 here, which is to eliminate the comment period in beginning in 2023. And as has been stated several times, we always have the ability to insert a comment period if we think the issue is weighty enough. And in most cases, almost all cases, it isn't. So that would be my inclination.
Okay. So there's a motion for that. Is there any second for that motion? Don't see a second. Is there?
Oh, I think
So-
hands
Oh,
are.
there is.
Yeah.
their hands up.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, David. I think I saw your hand first.
Well, I was just gonna suggest maybe just can we just do a straw poll? Do we actually need to vote on something? Or does it make an, like, what is the implication of voting on something versus just doing a straw poll to know where we're leaning?
I think a straw poll is appropriate. It gets at the same, yeah, just do a consensus as opposed to a formal. So yeah, we can do a straw poll. So
So
is,
that would be my suggestion.
okay. So Tom, why don't you go ahead and then we'll revisit the motion on the floor. Or the proposal for a straw poll.
Well, I think Tom O'Rourke would have to take his motion off the table, right? If we're doing that. So,
Right,
oh,
right,
no, I
right.
guess it hasn't been seconded yet, so he probably does. So, yeah, I mean, I was thinking, is there two directions that we can ask staff? One is, and I agree with this, eliminate the comment period, number 3, as one direction. And then the second direction would be keeping the comment period, but allowing us to decide, when we want to eliminate the comment period. Okay, yeah, and I mean, we get to the same place either way, but just what people think, and that can be tied into the straw poll that David's talking about.
Right. I agree. Yes, it does sound like those are the two big choices. Len.
Well, and it's not only because Mr. Olenoff comes to a lot of advisory council meetings to me, but also because I do agree with the general principle. I mean, I would be inclined to keep the comment period, but to allow us to waive it, since in both cases we have to amend the public outreach plan. And I think it's just it's an easier and an argument that I feel better making to the public, where I reside most of the time anyways. I'm just saying that we're going to default to the comment period, but but when we decide to waive it, we need to come to you with the reason, for why we're going to waive it, and that reason has to make sense to me, to us as in this group, and the MPO board, and the public itself can look at those reasons. Even if we don't give them a comment period, I'm sure they'll make a comment anyways, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Len. Tom?
Okay, so with all that, right, I feel like we're running in circles a little. So do we even need to do any kind of poll? Can we just ask staff to come, to give us some text basically with the two items that are on the, that we brought up, one, the elimination, one, keeping it, but allowing us to waive the comment period instead of doing a vote or anything like that. We're just asking you come up with some a draft copy of what each one is. Next meeting, we vote on it and we're done.
Yes, we can do that.
Yep, I agree. Daniel?
Yep, I agree with Tom. And I understand. Yeah, I think that just moving things along here. I guess the only other thing I would just say, what I said earlier, is that aligning this with any of the other, I guess, federal guidance or whatever we need to again clarify what's really an amendment or what's just really a small administrative modification. To be clear about, when something comes as a quote unquote amendment, that it's meets whatever requirements or whatever sort of passes the bar for, I guess, getting to that point. Because again, trying to provide some flexibility on these administrative things that are small and fairly negligible. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I think we'll go with Tom's suggestion to have staff drop some options, and we'll come back to the committee with those options. So I think in discussing the options, I think we had some good additional discussion for staff to go off of. So I think we can leave that one there for now. And yeah, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is discussion on converting corridor studies into recurring projects. So, Sandy?
Yeah, thank you, Derek. And thank you, everybody. That was a very contentful and productive discussion. So the other thing we wanted to bring up with you today, and this is a similar item where we're not looking for a formal vote, but just for your guidance as to how we write the 2023 UPWP, is that, as you know, we have within the discrete studies that you select every year for what we call recurring projects, which are studies that are funded on a predictable basis, either every year or every other year. And that's been going on now for 8 or 10 years, where these have been funded every single year. And we wanted to bring to you this year a proposal to slightly change up how we do that. So as you know, we have the two what we call corridor studies that are managed out of Mark Abbott's group, Traffic Analysis and Design. And then every other year we trade off between safety and operations at selected intersections and low cost improvements to express highway bottleneck locations. And then there's also the small budget line for staff generated research and technical assistance. And our proposal essentially is to take these all out of the realm of discrete studies and convert everything that's managed out of the TAD group, Mark's group, into a permanent program. When we would also be converting the staff generated research into a permanent budget line, since it already essentially is at this point, but that's a very small budget line. So if we could go to the next slide, please. The idea would be to take the budgets of all of those corridor studies in a given year and consolidate them into what we would call a corridor and complete streets program. And that would give us a little bit of additional flexibility to develop studies on a timeline that makes sense. We've had some disruption to the timeline for these studies, these traffic studies over the last couple of years because of COVID. There's often other complications, whether weather related or just events or whatever. And it would give us some ability to focus this on environmental justice communities, to work with sub-regional groups, take into consideration Title VI requirements when identifying projects. It would also have the side benefit of fulfilling a new requirement in the infrastructure bill that MPOs spend 2.5% of their planning funds on complete streets type projects. It would actually considerably exceed that percentage. So essentially we'd be doing the same types of work, but would have considerably more flexibility to meet sub-regional and MPO and community needs doing this, and to work on timelines that aren't necessarily tied as directly to the federal fiscal year. So I would invite Mark and Rebecca to speak if they'd like to, a little bit more on the benefits of this. And then of course we want to hear your thoughts on the matter.
I guess I'll go first. Sandy brought this up to me a few weeks ago about consolidating, or actually longer than that. And I've given it a lot of thought, and it's something that I think we should pursue as a MPO. The main reason being it'll allow us to have a lot more flexibility about what we're studying and when we're studying it. You know, right now we're tied to the fiscal year. We have to pick a project at the beginning of the year and complete it in the fiscal year. But it's usually just one project. This way, I think we can be more responsive to communities. In the past, you know, if a community during their MAPC's fall outreach, a lot of times communities will come up with different things they would like to study or have studied, and we haven't been able to do that. We always have to put them off till the next fiscal year if we have an available program or UPWTP corridor study or intersection study available for us to look at it. This way we can be a little more responsive. We can still look at that, determine a budget for a particular study and conduct it, hopefully. And this also eliminates the need to try to complete it in a fiscal year. Not that we don't shoot for that, but say a community comes to us in July or June, you know, typically we'd have to put that off to the next fiscal year. But this way we'll be able to start it in one fiscal year and complete it in the next fiscal year, since it's an ongoing program type of thing. It'll also let us look at different things, you know, and say we get communities that want two different communities want intersections looked at, or 3 intersections looked at. Typically we have to wait till that program comes up in a given fiscal year, since we were alternating that. And same thing with the corridor studies. We were looking at LRTP and sub-regional priority roadways. A lot of times we are getting more responses for the sub-regional priority roadway corridor studies than we were for the LRTP. Not that the LRTP isn't significant to the region, but so just trying to be more responsive to the communities, I think, is our goal with this program, and also dividing up. One of the things Sandy did, you know, instead of having scopes, we probably still develop scopes for this and bring it back to the UPWP committees throughout the year saying, this is what we're planning on working on, this is how we're going to work it on. So we keep the committee informed about our current studies and as well as the full MPO board.
Thanks, Mark and Sandy. So yeah, I think we can get into the discussion now. So Steve.
I think this is what we've done already, with freight studies. We used to have to fight to get a freight study every year, and that decide, what was needed to be done. And after a while, when the MPO recognized freight studies were important, should be done on a regular basis, there was a sum of money which was allocated for freight studies every year, and we didn't have to come up with the particular study in time for the fiscal year. Is just during the course of the fiscal year, the staff would come back and say, okay, we're going to do this particular freight study this year, and that's worked out very well. So I think this sounds like the identical sort of thing, only for these other kinds of studies. So this is a good idea.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the direction. Generally in favor of certainly of being more responsive to communities when there's things that we can help them with. Just a few questions that come to mind. One is, in the previous slide, there was a note about, I guess, one of the other programs programs that comes up either every year or from time to time, is that one about the low cost improvements to bottlenecks. And I'm sort of curious if that would actually still fit under here. Another question is sort of remind me sort of how much money, if this program would have if it's combining a bunch of different things, how much does that money we're talking about on a regular basis? Would this, I guess, two other questions, and then I'll leave it there. I'm wondering if there's you continue to be, of course, like some kind of application or I guess sort of screening process for different projects. And then would this is all something that would be done by MPO staff or CTPS, I'm assuming. So I guess that's 4 questions, maybe 4 short questions, hopefully.
Okay. Sandy, did you want to?
So I can speak to some of them, and I'm sure Mark can. I think we do intend to continue with the bottlenecks work under whatever the future of this program is. In terms of the amount of money that is available to it, I'm looking this up right now. But let's see, this year we allocated $133,000 to sub-regional priority roadways, $145,000 to needs assessment corridors, and $82,000 to safety and operations and selected intersections. And so I think what we'd be doing is, adding up those 3 budgets basically going forward, and maybe averaging it over the last several years. But it's a considerable amount of money. We'd be talking about $200,000 to $300,000 each year for this program. And then, yeah, Mark, did you want to respond to anything else?
Sure. With the bottlenecks, yes, Daniel, I think we will continue doing that. That's mostly done on our limited access highways for MassDOT. So we continued our outreach with the different districts and seeing if they have locations or problem areas they would like examined as well. What other questions did you have?
One about the screening process.
Oh, that's right, the screening process. Yeah, we would screen process. We probably revamp our application process that's online to give the community something on our website that they can apply for, state the reasons why they would like a study, the problems they're having, and what their goals are, typically to go forward with this, a study. And then we probably do some of our screening that we normally do each year for each of our projects. And when we do our selection process, look at the crash history, the use of the roadway, things like that, to make sure that it's kind of worthwhile, that it's not a low priority roadway compared to possibly another community's request that's, it's a higher priority based on the different criteria we have, which now does include EJ and things like that in it as well.
Okay, yeah, and just the last question is, I assume this would still be all CTPS staff work.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Daniel. David?
All right, well, maybe Mark just answered this. I'm not sure. I think I'll ask it again. So with a permanent program and with these, bullets, right, that, talk about what would take priority in terms of which project to select, right? I think I'd like to know, with these changes, would it impact at all which projects would actually be selected? Are we creating some kind of new disadvantage to some good studies if if they're not within one of these focus areas? Or are we really not changing anything? And I'm thinking of, in particular, there was a great study that was done right here on Washington Street. We would not be a focus area, but this was a really good project, and that's resulting in ongoing changes. But would a project like that now be a new type of disadvantage if it's not within one of our focus characteristics?
Well,
Mark?
yeah, no, our intentions is to keep doing the same type of studies we've previously been doing. When Sandy has the focus up on EJ communities, sub-regional groups and things like that, those are just some of the criteria we're going to use in selecting the corridor. It's not going to be just within those groups. So yes, the Newton study we did for you a few years ago would come up again. Our intentions is to keep doing the studies we are doing today, but also maybe include some other studies that we are not doing today, looking at more transit usage along a corridor or curb usage along a corridor type of thing. Some of the, applying, maybe working with communities on, with the curb. We put out some guidelines books on curb usage this past few years. So we might be able to tie that into some of our studies that we're doing now. So we're actually trying to expand on what we're looking at today.
All right, so
Not
there would be
eliminate things.
I mean, I would just let's say that there's Weston that might have a project that they wouldn't look at something and say, oh, we're not an environmental justice community, we're not a Title VI community, we seem less likely to be selected, let's not bother. That wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think Sandy put these bullets as just a starting point, a discussion point. So this isn't the actual program we'll present to you when we go through the UPW process, but it'll be one of these focus areas will be included in others as well. So we're not trying to limit it to any communities.
All right.
Or actually, we're not trying to eliminate any of our 97 communities. We're trying to encompass them all.
Thank you, Mark.
And I would just add that we can have Mark and his crew come back to this committee and present more on their methods for selecting studies, and have a discussion about that at a future point.
Yeah, and this will be kind of it'll be new since it'll be one larger program where we're trying to select different programs. So we'll have to be working on how we're going to do an application process on our website that we can direct people through our outreach efforts to and provide some criterias on that website, on the application process as well. So
That's good. Len?
Yeah, so well, this is interesting, and I'll tell you one of the issues that the advisory council generally has with the UPWP process is that there just seems to be very little money left to fund smaller studies, because even the smaller ones, you have a little bit of a price tag to them, and they're usually in the tens of thousands. But I think this is good. I'll certainly be interested in seeing what the rest of the council thinks about it. But in terms of oversight, in the process, maybe oversight is the right word, but right now we get to rank these projects. When I understand that you really want to have more control, or at least a little more flexibility in how to work with communities on their proposals. And I think that's wonderful. But to the extent that you have more than one project that can be funded, right now it seems that the UPW process gives us all a chance to weigh in and say which one we prefer to have done. And it seems like this will take away that. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but I guess what I'm trying to find out is there some way that this group and the advisory council, I know I'm representing it, but also just give the advisory council as a group a way to weigh in on what you're thinking, what moves forward.
Well, I would say two things, Len. One is that, first of all, this committee has jurisdiction over the entire UPWP, including the permanent programs. So just because we're calling it a permanent program that we're presuming is permanent instead of a discrete study doesn't mean that you don't have the right to talk about it or, or hold oversight over it or suggest that we tell us to do something different with it. The other thing is that, Mark's group has traditionally brought their studies, their site selection to the full MPO. And as part of the discussion that I think I mentioned a moment ago, that might be a good idea in terms of site selection. I think there could be a more robust discussion about what exactly the process is and whether it involves this committee and the advisory council in addition to the full MPO.
Right, but usually once it's brought to us, though, it's just pretty well developed. It's hard to say, well, don't do that. But whereas with the current UPW process, when it comes to the selection of a project, then we can ask a lot more questions. I'm not saying no. I'm just kind of pointing out some potential issues. That's all. But overall, I support this. I'll stop. Thank you.
Len, do you mean it's not so much the studies we've been doing before that, what we're going to study, so much as more of the discrete studies of what that input, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that what you're thinking more?
Yeah.
I think that'll still be there. Those are still going to be brought forward. These are just taking the place of the 2 quarter studies we're doing and say this year, the safety and ops type of thing. There still will be that funding available for discrete UPWP studies that the UPW committee will be selecting and have input on. So there's still going to be that process. This is not just encompassing all the money in the UPWP to do this. This is just to take those 3 recurring studies that we're doing, lumping them together, and then you'll still have the selection of other discrete UPW studies based on funding.
No, I understood that, but yeah, I understood that. It was more so the studies that are going to be selected within this grouping, that I feel that we are losing the ability to make meaningful input on them. Because, for instance, is it the corridor studies that you bring to us? There are some studies that you bring to the MPO that are part of the recurring funding. And at that point, I kind of feel, well, this is a done deal. And I'm just happy that you all are putting it together because it's a good idea, and I'm generally supportive. But my thoughts are, if I didn't, what would be my recourse now? Because there's just been so much effort put into this, and I'm kind of late. We're kind of late in the process of chiming in. That I kind of feel that it's kind of like you take it or leave it. I'm just trying to see what is it in this process that would allow us to give some input into the selection process before it's brought to the full appeal board. That's all. Thanks.
No, I understand you now a little better. No, we could. Our intentions were always probably to come back to the UPWP committee to let you know what we're planning on studying. So there would be opportunity to discuss then. And a lot of this might be based on what we get for feedback from communities during our outreach program and what they would like studied. So we might not have, say right at the beginning of the new fiscal year this year, we might not have 5 locations to study right away for you to choose from. And maybe, hey, this has come up. This is why we wanted to study it. This is what the community would like to do. Are you on board with this, and type of thing, and inform you of, what we would like to study for them, type of thing. So I think we could provide you probably with a little more information, and allow you to some input, probably a little more than what you have now on our selection.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for hanging with me on the question.
No problem.
Daniel?
I'll ask probably last question here since it's almost 10 o'clock. I'm just curious about the staff generated research line item that usually fluctuates a bit, or just curious if that would be, if it becomes a permanent program, would it be a sort of permanent amount of money, or whether that would change from year to year?
Great question. It's traditionally been right around $20,000. I think it started out at 10,000 and it's jumped up to 20,000. You know, if we have an extra 2,000 to 3,000 here or there, sometimes it goes up or down. But I think we would presume that it would start at about that $15,000 to $20,000 level and stay there constantly. Although knowing that we're getting additional funding through the infrastructure bill, everything is a little bit in flux, and we might see bumps across the board. But the idea would be for it to stay a relatively small and stable budget.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So that's a good discussion, and yeah, it does sound like it might be of interest at a future meeting to come back with some more details. So that would be great. But thank you for that. I think with that we can move to the next item, which is members items. Are there any members that would like to provide an update or have any other business? All right. Seeing none, we can move on to last item. So the next meeting is scheduled for April 28th, 2022 at 9 a.m. And I think at that meeting, we'll be discussing the universe of proposed studies and begin the process of selecting studies for the 2023 UPWP. So I think with that, Daniel, did you want to make a motion to adjourn?
Sure. I was
Or-
just, so
oh,
the
yeah, go
last,
ahead.
sorry, the
Yeah.
last time we talked about meeting on the 14th. So we're going to move that to the 28th.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And
Thank
that
you.
should give us time to clarify a bunch of the things that came up today, especially with regard to the budget and everything.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. All right, thank you. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any objections? All right, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. See you at the MPO meeting and back here on April 28th.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.